Hello, everyone. I am Marjorie Bostwick Phoenix, founder and CEO of Giving Voices Project. We welcome you to Barbershop Talk, a discussion about men and abuse. This is our second installment of this event. And although when our organization was first founded, we focused mostly around the stories of women that were victims of abuse. And in telling those stories, we became aware very quickly that there were quite a few men that are experiencing abuse and didn't know it, or have no one that they can trust to talk about it. The purpose of this discussion is to inform and educate you about this subject. Giving Voices Project's mission is to inspire, empower survivors of abuse using artistic expression while engaging and educating society on the effects of abuse through partnership in the arts and community activism. We want to invite you to visit our website at givingvoicesproject.org to find out more about the work that we do. To lead us in this discussion are Brian T. Bethea and Pernell Bush, along with a shared experience and story from Milton McCullough. First, I would like to introduce our host for the event, Brian T. Bethea. Brian is an artist, he's a poet, and he's also the host of Confessions with Brian Bethea on 102 Jams. He's also the host of Writer's Block, a community-based gathering of up-and-coming writers in the Orlando area. I want to thank you, Brian, for agreeing to facilitate this discussion for us today. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Margie, for having me. And again, it's been a pleasure for me to go ahead and of course, help facilitate this. This is absolutely a dynamic topic that needs to be talked about. So what I'd like to do, of course, and just say thank you for allowing me to do this. And hopefully, of course, we'll have a wonderful discussion. So I want to go ahead and start with the introduction of our guest, Mr. Pernell Bush. He is the managing partner and practicing mental health therapist as a state of Florida registered clinical social worker at Key Counseling Solutions and instructor at Valencia College Peace and Justice Institute. He is currently running the Seminole County Commission, District 5, and is a former Marine veteran and father of 2. So we definitely would like to have him on. Mr. Bush, how are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing my best to survive this pandemic, and hopefully, we'll be able to, continue to survive and maintain as well.
Definitely. First of all, I want to tell you guys, thank you for having me on. And this is a very important topic for us to be speaking about. But first, allow me to somewhat apologize. I have my son in the background, so you may hear a little baby babbling here and there. So just give you a heads up.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. And trust me, I'm a father myself, so I know we have to make sure that we keep our kids busy and things, especially during this time. Just first of all, how are you really maintaining? How you and your family maintaining during this pandemic?
I believe from the expression that my family has said that everyone seems to be doing pretty well. We all have found a way to cope throughout this time and continue to remain and find ways to be productive as well. I think with our society, we're so used to always being on the go, on the move. When we had this sudden just stop, it almost makes you feel as if, oh my God, what's going to happen to my life?
Right.
So finding a semblance of a routine to get into, so for our household, man, we try to make it very simple. Like as soon as it happened, we had my daughter who's 8 years old, we had to take over the teaching responsibilities for her. So I got up in the middle of the night and create a structured schedule. Because as a mental health professional, one of the things that, we say is paramount for children is somewhat of a sustainable, predictable schedule that keeps them at a low stress level. So then I did the same for my household. I'm like, hey, babe, listen, we're going to keep the cooking and everything very simple. What I meant by that, like, listen, Mondays is a hamburger night. some form of hamburger Tuesdays. It's Taco Tuesday. So now when we go shopping, because we don't know what our budget may look like, because a lot of people are financially impacted, we were able to make sure that we had what we're going to need to eat for dinner and breakfast and lunch for weeks to come, because we had a schedule. So they just cut down a lot of stress to the best ways, to the things that we could control.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so let's get further in. So first question I'd like to really ask you, and like you to delve into, is what are the different forms of what we call intimate partner violence?
So there are varying different forms of intimate partner violence. So when we talk about, a lot of times people think about physical violence. When we think about getting hit, punched, because that's very apparent. Somebody hits you or punch you, that's something that's evident. Yeah, when you see those things. But there's still psychological and emotional abuse as well, and neglect. So these things normally we don't have a conversation about, because you can't really tell when someone has been psychological abused, and unless they actually disclose that to you. And then, and I'm not going to jump ahead, but we're talking about men in abuse. That's one of the paramount things that take place. But yeah, so those are the different forms off the top of my head. You have your physical, your social, your physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. Okay.
And then on top of that, why are you speaking of that? Since you kind of brought that up, why don't men actually come to and report, when they are victims of the intimate partner abuse?
It can be a plethora of different things. A lot of times we as men, I'm saying we, because myself being a man as well, I can potentially identify with, is that you never want to be perceived as weak. For a man who said, "Hey, I'm getting abused by my partner," whether it's a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, it still sometimes can come off as internally. It might be a struggle with them internally, because I'm not weak. This is just what's going on. Another thing is identifying that you are being abused. Sometimes you might see your homeboy might get slapped by his girl, or you see someone getting their shirt and things pulled on, and they don't really see that as abuse. Especially if someone acting out angry, it's like, oh, that's just a normal part of our relationship. So abuse is very subjective. Is what we think and what we believe is abuse. So sometimes with men, our threshold for particularly physical abuse is a lot larger. It's going to take real significance for someone to think, all right, man, I am being abused. Like, I had a client who had got stabbed by his girlfriend before he realized, well, we've been going through this type of thing for a while, but it wasn't until she stabbed me in my leg that I realized this isn't right. So just coming forth and understanding that. And then also, once again, psychological and emotional abuse are just hard to identify personally as well. But when it comes to emotional and psychological abuse, if your partner knows something triggers you, and they continue to nag and continue to pick at that until it invokes this reaction in you, that's an abusive type of relationship there. So those things are very important.
Now, let me follow up with that, because I know for me, I've had friends tell me before they've been in relationships where what's the best way to say it? Like, they didn't feel like their partner loved them unless they got hit. If you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard about stories like that?
I'm actually get you to ask that question again, but I want to give a big shout out to Christine. She said also financial abuse, that is another big part. So Brian, I'm going to get that question again also. So I was trying to make sure I seen that question and acknowledge her for that. So Can you run that question back for me?
Like, I've had friends explain situations where they've been in a relationship with somebody that's been abused so much that they often see that now as a form of love, and they don't feel like their partner loves them unless they're being hit or abused. Have you seen something like that? And what type of is there a name for that?
Yeah, they're so interchangeable. Sometimes people use trauma bonding, as a term that's been utilized for that type of relationship. So when you're bonded by your trauma, so say you have this intimate partner cycle that you guys are having, where it's always this high intense type of either arguing, hands on one another, and then you take that type of emotional thought process that this is what love really is. You know, that trauma. You think this trauma, you can feel that. You can actually feel it. You know, so you think this is how love is supposed to feel. So yeah, I have seen that before. I see that more, particularly more along with my female clients than I have with male clients. Because to them, to a lot of those clients that I have worked with, and when I have done speaking engagements, it's to me, it makes it apparent that this person loves me. If the person is so upset, if this person is so willing to potentially fight with me to make sure I don't do certain things, to them that's a demonstration of love. But it's an unhealthy part of love.
Okay. And then why are men who are what we call IPV victims often pathologized and sometimes regarded, with suspicion by the very agencies that that they should be helping them?
Got it. So why are men who come out as intimate partner violent victims sometimes are pathologized? First and foremost, if you're going to a certain agency and going to certain communities that haven't been trauma-informed trained, that haven't had these type of conversations, I don't think the confusion intense with intimacy. That's very true. But when individuals may go to these agencies and then you're a man that's going to report, sometimes you got to be something must be psychologically wrong with you. You're not being abused. So it's almost like they're belittling your lived experience. So it is very much something very, very something that we have to go out as myself as a mental health professional and as a social worker. We have to get out to these different sectors and agencies and provide the adequate training. So when men do come forth, the personnel that's supposed to be there to serve them have the adequate training to know how to respond in that situation. So that's another reason a lot of men don't come forward, because they feel as if, hey, I might go tell you this is what's going on with me, but at the end of the day, I feel like I'm getting laughed out the room. I feel like, they're talking about me behind my back. So this is a very much issue that has to be addressed from a larger macro level when it comes to the individuals providing the services.
And on top of that, let me also ask this then, because I know sometimes we talk about, the whole thing about toxic masculinity.
Yes.
That's been going on. Do you think, because I guess from like you and I generation, I'm guessing like I'm in my 40s and whatnot. So, I know from, when I was coming up, it was just basically, man, toughen up, suck it up, you'll be all right. Whereas it seems to be a little different these days. So is it possible that maybe what we call like toxic masculinity, part of that, where men don't feel comfortable coming forward because they're afraid of how they might be perceived, especially depending on, especially when you have a size difference. Let's say you have a guy that's maybe like 6'5", 250, and his girlfriend's maybe about 5'5", or $120, and she's abusing him. Is that sometimes like hard for people to understand? And especially with men like that, do they have a hard time, especially coming forward when there are men of particular size?
Definitely. So you know what? I don't like the term toxic masculinity. That's just my personal preference. To me, toxic masculinity is a term. I understand the what is meant by it. I understand. I agree with the definition. However, I feel as if a lot of times we talk about toxic masculinity, when I talk about it with other men, the message gets so missed because they get caught on the term toxic masculinity, because they're like, I'm not toxic. So I utilize rigid masculinity, because you can go from being rigid to more fluid. That's my personal opinion. So you might be so rigid in the way that you were brought up and how you were taught about masculinity that it may be more difficult for you to go out and go out and be very honest about what is going on with you emotionally. What's going on at home. Like you stated, for myself, I'm a 260-pound muscle-bound black guy to a lot of people. They look at me, but if I had an issue with me being originally masculine, I'll have an issue probably going to make a report. Hey man, my girlfriend who's 5'1" is always slapping me in my face. So that could be a challenge, a barrier that some individuals are that they are having complications with. So, when I go out and I speak about fluid masculinity, I'm like, when we get to a certain place in our upbringing, in our life stages, we have to understand that there isn't just one way to be masculine or be a masculine man. It can be fluid in how we on the spectrum of scale of masculinity. So just really teaching men that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to talk about what may be going on that's bothering you. So you're exactly right about that. A major challenge may be that some men feel like, hey, I can't go talk about this because they're not going to believe me. If I'm 6'5" and my girlfriend who's 5'7" is beating on me, who's going to believe that? So it's already like they're going to feel like they're going to get victim shame.
Right. Looks like we got a question from the chat.
I know many men that have been raped. For me, it seems to draw me towards more assault and domestic violence. Does it lead men to the same or also to take role as an abuser? Gotcha. So let's answer that one. Let's answer the first part of that. So for me, it seems to draw me towards more assault and domestic violence. I don't know what you mean by what it means to draw you towards more assault and domestic violence, but let's see. So I'm gonna just take off what I made. Thank you, asking Christine. Does it lead men to the same, or does it does also take to the role as abuser? So I believe a lot of times with men, if we're talking about men that may potentially have been raped, have been molested, I don't want to talk about data because I don't have the references to give to you, but I'm going to talk about the data that I have read, and then hopefully if I find out the references, I can give it to Marjorie and she can share with you all. But it has been shown that men who have been raped, who have been molested, do tend to become more of the abusers later because now they're trying to get that strength back, per se, to show that they're not weak or show that they're I still am capable of being big and strong. So there has been a large statistical study that showed that men that have been raped or molested, especially in their adolescent years, they have more of a tendency to become abusers. And that's just the men that got caught. There's probably a large population of men that who probably were molested and abused at a young age who weren't a part of that study because they became functioning citizens of the world. So they're not able to be included in that type of study. So a lot of these studies were caught from men who have been incarcerated for heinous crimes and things of that nature. So that's, we got to consider the outlier on that. One of my abusers had been molested. So exactly, in a way that's answer that question there. So a lot of times, those who become the abused have a history of have been abused themselves or molested. I have friends who feel such shame. I want to know how to help. I usually focus on women and confusion. I'm afraid of men, but seems they be less scary if they got support from friends. You know what? Let's talk about that support system there. Support and accountability. So we as men got to start. We have to, if we see that we have a male friend or a male associate who's displaying such behaviors, we have to hold them accountable. So let's talk about accountability first, but then also be able to be supportive for your men or male friends who are individuals who may have experience, who have experienced sexual assault. To hold that space with them to understand that they're not alone. That they have a place that they can be open and vulnerable, and they're not going to get ridiculed and laughed out the room.
Right. I think that can be a problem. And I think a lot of times now, we as men are not, because you did mention it, we as men are not holding each other accountable. For instance, I see where that person may have been coming from, like they're kind of afraid of men, especially with the, unfortunate video that I saw earlier this week, where a young man hit a woman in the face with a skateboard.
Yeah.
After being rejected. I would, I know me personally, I encourage like for us as men to not only hold each other accountable, but for us to have like an outlet, like what we're doing now, barbershop talk. You know what I'm saying? That I would just encourage for us to like get more together. Like I have a group of friends where I know if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling a certain way, I can go and talk to and have like a little powwow, with them. I'm just not sure, especially now that we talk about this, um, I'm just not sure how comfortable a lot of guys feel in regards for doing that. Do you feel like a part of this might be because of how we've been taught as like little boys?
Oh
Because
yeah.
I know when I know little girls know how to. They've been brought up how to
Have those type of communications. So, Brian, I appreciate that question. So I often talk about, from birth to 18, we are in what we call homosocial development, which means that we
right.
majorly hang around same-sex individuals during our social and growth development, emotional growth development. So I don't know about it for you, but I know for myself, when I was 15, 16, 17, I never had these type of conversations with my home was like, man, let me tell you how I'm internally feeling today. It was never something that was truly talked about within our social circle. So to really get to that place of understanding that a lot of stuff does start from birth to 18. That's why it's very important that we implement social emotional education within the educational system, some shape, form, or fashion. Because at the end of the day, when we're able to start to teach our okay, babe, you can't talk over there though. When we're talking about social emotional education and trying to have an opportunity to teach individuals how to first understand and recognize the emotions that they may be experiencing. Second, to identify when these emotions and feelings and thoughts that they have maybe is could be intimately dangerous for themselves personally or for those around them. So we have to start to have those type of conversations. So when you're getting taught that those social emotional type of education at a very young age, it's going to somehow transition into your friend's social circle. Because now we all have learned about it, we know about it, so we're going to be more apt to potentially have these conversations with our friends.
Okay.
That's very important, man. Very important.
And how do you think this pandemic, has it really assisted with more? I've heard that it's assisted with domestic violence
Increase
cases have
violence.
gone up. Has it been? I know mostly like a lot of women get abused. Do you know if the same has been for men as well? With this pandemic.
So I haven't heard much about the increase of domestic violence abuse with men as victims, but it has been stated by several different agencies throughout the counties that I work within that there has been an uptake in domestic violence reports from women. So a lot of time domestic violence is just like majority of the crime is proximity. So when this pandemic happened, there's no break anymore where our regular work day, such as you leaving the house, me leaving the house to go to work. You might have the opportunity to, if something is taking place or emotion is getting high, or you leave and go into a different social circle with friends to let things calm down. So now, without those everyday avenues of release, such as work, social things, now the increase of emotional heightness and the increase of being in the proximity of someone who is already a dangerous individual, it could increase that. So once again, I don't think there's been a major increase with men because a lot of times it's underreported. And maybe those men are not reported.
Okay. And then I know we had someone wanted to ask a question. How much support is available for men?
Say that one more time.
It was a question in the chat. How much support is available to men?
I believe there is a lot of support available to men. When I mean a lot, when I say I believe there's a lot of support, me being a social worker and a therapist, I see that there are organizations who have created programs specifically for men. I see that there are therapists that are open specifically for men. But the thing is, once again, it's getting the men there. So there's support out there. And then once again, what I tell to my counterparts who may create these programs, that they also have to do their part to get out into the communities where men may be, to make sure that they know. Because just because you put on your social media or you put on your webpage doesn't mean that that majority of men are going to be actively looking for these things. So you have to make it apparent, So I'm always going to be a big advocate for anyone that's in the mental health field, social work field. Get out into the community, make sure the word is out there, make sure the people know that you are here to provide services. And then that gives them at least the option of understanding, hey, if I want these services there, it's available to me.
Okay, and I had a question. I just something that I just thought about. I know, of course, as young men or like teenagers and maybe and children, of course, we have a lot of our young males that go through sexual abuse or what have you. But how much are men getting sexually abused as when they're grown or what have you? Do you see a lot of that? Because I know some people when people. It's a hard thing to understand, but because unfortunately society has geared us to be, as men, they've geared us to be like over sexualized or what have you. But how does a man deal with a woman who's sexually abusing him, if you can say that, and of course the other way around, in case you have any men that are gay or that have been in that regard. Do you see a lot of that as well?
Right. So, when it comes to that, once again, it comes to us providing men with the tools to be able to really talk about what they maybe be feeling emotionally. Because we have been conditioned as men in society, in a way, as you just stated, to be okay with being sexualized. For example, gray sweatpants season. I know some men who excited for that season because like, hey, that's what it is. They don't feel like it's abusive to them or being over sexualized. But if you are someone who identifies that you identify and you just personally feel that you've been over sexualized, that it's okay to come forward. Once again, all these things are very subjective. When I say subjective, it's a personal journey that we go through. That hey, I feel that this woman that keep looking at me and I told her I'm not interested, but she keep, hey, what's happening? I feel like I'm being over sexualized. And be okay, because I'm not gonna lie. When I was a younger man, I would clown. I'm just being openly and transparent here. When I was a young man, before I understood the things that I know now, I would clown one of my homeboys if they had came to me like, "Hey man, this chick keep bothering me, and I don't want to. I'm tired of her talking to me." I'm like, "Yo man, get over that." That's what I would have said as when I was a young man. Right. But now understanding that if it is something that's truly making you feel uncomfortable, truly making you feel just unsafe in the environment that you're in, or just uncomfortable, and uncomfortable in that way, it is okay to report it. But once men do underreport, man. So abuse, sexual assaults. I know for me, personally, when I was younger as well, I was walking through the club and girls would grab at my penis, and I'm not. To me, it wasn't no thing when I was younger. And at that time, I was dating a young lady who got so upset about it. Like, how does that not bother you? I'm like, yo, that's just how the world is. But that doesn't have to be okay with you.
And you know what? It's funny because we talk about this because I have a poem that I do. I'm not going to be able to do it today right now online here, but I had a young man come up to me afterwards after this poem I do called Process of Elimination. And it's, to put it in short, it's really about a prostitute who was abused and ended up being unfortunately killed by one of her Johns or what have you. But I had a young man, it caught me off guard because I had a young man come up to me afterwards, and all the abuse I explained in the poem that this woman had gone through, he had explained he had gone through, and it kind of shocked me a little bit because you really don't hear about men going through issues like that. But I often I often think back about that situation and often, glad that I was able to at least hear his story,
Yeah.
because they said he had been abused by, men before,
Mm-hmm.
and sexually, and it just kind of caught me off guard. But it made me wonder, instead of coming down, or thinking negatively of him in some sort of way, often it made me think how many men are as brave as this young man to want to come forward to talk about this particular issue, and it just, I think our own ego just sometimes really gets in our way, because we don't want to feel we're not allowed as men to be vulnerable.
I wouldn't say it's an ego thing; it's a learned behavior thing.
That too.
When I hear ego, a lot of times, a lot of men, it's not their egos in a way; it's learned behavior. It's what's been socially acceptable for a long time, and it's time to change those social constructs to understand that it's okay, and also not be afraid about coming forward. And I give kudos to that young man for coming forward and sharing that story with you. Because when those stories get shared, like many other stories that get shared, then we're able to talk about implementing changes and policies and societal laws and regulations that can protect vulnerable individuals from going through things such as that. So that is very important, man. Very, very important. And I'm glad that she was able to be in that space with him.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen,
Phil.
what we want to do right now, of course, is bring on our second guest. We have Mr. Milton McCullough, who is about to join us. Milton is also an author, a poet, a playwright, founder of Conversations, a literary series, and survivor of sexual abuse. And of course, for those of us that live in the Orlando area, of course, during this pandemic, Milton has hosted his event at Three Mass Inc., which is on Colonial 1023 West Colonial Drive in Orlando. And so we definitely want to bring Milton on to start telling his story. Milton, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How you doing, Brian?
Okay, okay. Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it. So,
Good to see
Milton, I've
you,
known you
bro.
for of course quite a while. So we want to get into your story, man. So,
So,
how have you dealt with? First of all, when did the abuse start?
oh, I was young, like about eight, 9 years old, somewhere around there. And well, first, let me just say, it's good. It's good to see you, bro. I've been praying for you. Okay,
Appreciate it, man. Thank
it's
you. I
gonna get
appreciate it.
better. Yeah, man. And it's gonna be all right. And it's thanks to Marjorie and inviting me to be a part of this discussion. Um, Back to the question. For me, I was around eight. Sometimes the time you don't quite remember. You understand? Sometimes it seems like it's so far back that I think maybe you're trying to hide it, but the act is, the what you experience, you remember, and even some of that I think you don't remember. In my case, around that age, a much older female family member, um, whenever I would go visit, this was in the country, because I lived in the city, born and raised in the city for the most part, she would always want to invite me into her room, or if I was alone in the kitchen area, because they had an outdoor kitchen, she would always try to make unwanted advances to me.
Mm,
And as I said, she was much older. I'm talking about, she was in her maybe 30s,
mm,
maybe older. I can't remember completely sure, but yeah, she was at least in her 30s then. And so what would take place was that um, it would one of the things I remember is her trying to get me to penetrate her. I was so uncomfortable, you know. Was I was so uncomfortable. It was like, looking back, it was just not a pleasant feeling. And
Right.
so, the whole experience, because, um, it made me, whenever I went down, they would ask me, go look for your cousin so and so. And I would say, and I would just hesitate. I wouldn't say I'm not going. I was just like, and I just kind of just find something to do to avoid going there, until they would be like, have you gone to see so and so yet? Your cousin? No, no. And one of the things that she tried to do, I think, was she always wanted to give me stuff. She gave me a cow. It was a calf. When in Jamaica, if you had a cow and we got, you know, um, time to slaughter it, you made, good money off that.
Right.
Just one cow. And give me stuff, money. So, I believe it did affect me. And so, and I experienced not just sexual abuse, but, you know, but
How long
emotional
did it
abuse.
last? How long did it last?
Mm, to be honest, I don't remember. I just know it was happening for a while. I think maybe only a few years. You know, maybe 2 years, 3 years. That's as best as I can recall, because I've developed defensive mechanisms against it. Like, I just never go and stayed around long. If I went to say hi, I just say hi, everything, and I stayed. I avoided being in a position by my alone with her,
Hmm.
or or at certain time I would never be at her house at night. I never slept there. I would never go. That would be like, no way. I don't care what they would do. I would never. I never had any reasons to, and though invitations were given, I never took it up. So, and in addition to that kind of abuse, the emotional abuse by one of my stepdads was very traumatic too. So, coupled with both of those things, I think I suppressed it for a long time, or kept it um, just there, never talked about it, but I always felt it. Always felt it. Always felt the feeling of those actions. You know, when I was younger.
When you were going through the sexual abuse, at what point did you tell anybody? And if so, who did you tell? And how long did it take you to tell anybody?
I never did,
Mm.
because she was thought of highly. You know, um, she was kind of like a church person. So I mean, who's gonna believe me? They'll probably think I'm making that up. You know, that's how I
Mm.
felt. That was the belief. I never shared it with nobody, not my other cousins, my age or peers. It was like, you scared, because most likely it's going to be denied, and probably the narrative is going to change, and it's probably going to change to, yeah, he pull out his stuff, he exposed, and I have to put him in his place and let him know it's not appropriate, and know this boy is lying on me.
Right.
That was what it was. That's what I believe would have happened then. So I never said anything. I never I've never shared it with the family members. You know, um, I've never said who it was. Um, I mean, some people might, family members, if they heard them, might have figured out who it is. You know,
Right.
and maybe I was not the only one, but never shared. The only time I've shared this experience is publicly, when I did candid conversations on TV, on a TV show not long ago. I've shared it on my radio shows in the past when we had the topic already, and I've shared it with like friends now. You know, we
Yeah,
want to tell a story to help somebody else.
we had a question in the chat here. Someone had asked, did you ever decide to get therapy, or did you ever get therapy for these experiences?
Oh yeah, when I got much older, because I think because it created um, other issues for me that I didn't know that was part of it. I didn't know that the abuse both from my stepdad and the sexual abuse from that cousin. I didn't know that it was affecting me. One of the ways that it affected me, and as I said, I did do some counseling, but one of the ways it affected me was that I was always having a fear that I'd be abandoned.
Mm.
You know, like a fear of being abandoned, and let me explain it because in the case of the abuse by my stepdad, um, I never felt like my mom. I shared that with her, you know, um, and she never handled it well because she was with somebody who had what we call some shillings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so he took care of her. He had he had really good earning. He was a subcontractor with the electrical public service electrical company in Jamaica. Uh, it's like what you call it, whatever power company is here, Duke and so forth. That was the equivalent. So
Right.
he had a crewman that worked for him. He was an electrical contractor. But so that was it. So eventually I did see a counselor many years after. Um, Probably around mm, within the last probably about 13 years, 14, yeah, somewhere around that time.
Do you feel how effective do you think the counselor was in helping you through this?
Well, I, it was very effective. I think it was very effective because it gave me a better understanding of why I was reacting the way I was reacting. It gave me more clarity to my, as I said, my reactional behavior when certain things came up. I would go to that because it would make me feel safe. You understand?
Right.
It would make me feel like, okay, I'm gonna have to protect my heart. I have to protect myself because nobody else is going to do it because that's how it always felt. With the sexual abuse, with the emotional abuse, it felt like I was alone with this because you never felt like, for one, with the sexual abuse, anybody's going to believe you. you know,
Right.
they're not going to believe you. With the emotional abuse, um, they tried to just ignore it. Not try, they ignored it. I mean, she did voice some stuff, and I love my mama. She's not here, as you know, anymore. But
Right.
you know, everybody has flaws, and she tried to do her best with the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not angry at her. I mean, there was I was angry with her for a while about that. Um, but and I let her know too. Because by then I did counseling and I need to talk to her, but she's from this old school and she still like she wanted to put it aside and not give it the kind of credence and get and validate how I was feeling.
Right.
So um, yeah, it helped, man. It helped. I would tell anyone if you're struggling with some stuff, you know go see a counselor because it will help you to identify some things. It will help you to sort out and sort through some stuff, and it will help you to improve your relationships, current or future. You know.
Right. And so here's what we want to do. I want to ask you one more question, then I want you to stay on because I want to bring back on Purnell as well. But you know, another question from the chat. Uh, we have someone that asks, have any men come forward to you after hearing your story?
No, I've not. I've never had anyone coming forward. Um, I do believe that there are men who have heard the story and now feel um, like, well, I'm not alone. Even if they knew they were not alone, it
Right.
probably made them feel um, that way. But no, I've not had anyone come forward spoken to me in regards to this.
Okay.
But that's the thing about when you do stuff like this, when you do anything publicly or you share stuff, sometimes you share it with someone who, even when you share it with them, they may have gone through the same things, but they're
Right.
still so scared to admit to it. So, but you hope that when you have shared your experiences, such as these, um, that you have planted a seed, um, wherein that person will, um, at some point, use that seed that grows to say, "I need to get help." You know. So
Right.
you just never know. You just never know. I'm gonna share this real quick because recently I'm starting a new job, and so I have to go to these different locations. And when I was going through the locations, you always have to get your temperature checked. And this person, I always pass them, and they're always like in a book, like they're studying. And I'm saying, so I said, studying again, and she explained to me, yeah, yeah, I'm studying. I'm trying to get. She's a physical therapist, but she with a hospital, but she's on some kind of contractual stuff for many years with them, and and at this point, because of the COVID stuff, they're kind of not a lot of people get in touch, by physical therapists. That's kind
Right.
of like less and less. Although people may need it, they're trying to get people to, unless it's like have to. And so I told her, and she was worried. She was starting to get emotional because she thinks she's going to be let go. One of the people they're
Mm-hmm.
going to release. And I said to her, I started to share with her. I said, listen, you need to understand this job is a resource. It's not your source. you know, the God is your source, and He owns everything. So when the resource runs out, He has other resources. And so I left. We exchanged. She said, "Are you on Facebook?" I told her I was an author, blah blah blah. And next thing I know, she posted something on Facebook. I met this gentleman, this author, and he said something to me. I really needed to hear it, and she said it just made a big difference that he could stop to take the time out because he always see me and never just say hi and gone. So I'm just thinking in the same breath that you never know, even today, how it's going to help somebody tomorrow or today.
Right. Right. Well, listen, what we're going to do, and of course, stay on with me. What we're going to do is bring back on Purnell. Purnell, are you
Yes.
available? See if he comes back on.
I'm here. How you guys? I'm here.
All right. All right. Great to have you both on
Yes,
at the
he's
same
coming back.
time, of course. Thank you so much. And we definitely want to continue the chat. This is something, again, that we need to continue to talk about. And we do hope that all of y'all that are watching and are participating, that, of course, that you do definitely spread the word and, let men know that, they have someone they can come talk to, of course. Also, before I forget, Milton, Milton, let's start with you. How can people reach out to you on social media?
Sorry.
Can someone reach out to you on social media?
Sure. Definitely. Facebook, Milton McCulloch. Instagram, IG, Milton McCulloch. That's my two main stuff.
Okay. And Purnell, what about you? How can people reach out, get in contact with you?
On Instagram, you can reach out to me via the Juggernaut_therapist. That's the Juggernaut_therapist on Instagram, and then on Facebook, LinkedIn, just Purnell Bush.
Okay. Okay. And
right here.
I don't. Are y'all hearing static in the background?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what that's from. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through the rest of this, of course. But so, Purnell, back to you, of course. What are and I understand that there's trauma and PTSD when it comes to abuse. We know that a lot of women go through it. What are some of the signs that a man may show in terms of abuse when it comes to like their trauma and PTSD?
Definitely. Well, before I want to get there, real quick, Milton, I appreciate you sharing your story, man. And one thing that stood out was you said, "Who is going to believe me?" So when you were asked about, did you ever share your story? You said you asked yourself this question: who is going to believe me? And that's what I'm saying. That's what is a major barrier for a lot of men and a lot of victims in general to come out and truly speak about the abuse that they may be experiencing. But to get back to your question, when it comes to PTSD, traumatic events, and what signs and symptoms may be displayed, one thing is intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance, reoccurring fear of that situation happening again, flashbacks. These type of things happen with PTSD. Just to name a few. But we gotta understand that PTSD, post-traumatic stress, is exactly what it is. What it sounds like it is. Is how that traumatic event, how it stressed us to that point to where it has left a lasting impression for the rest of our lives, to where it's always there and we feel it with us. So these things, when it comes to that, we have to be very mindful about our physiology change. You have to be very truthful when it comes to, because we don't know if you're having intrusive thoughts. Like if a victim come forth and they don't really tell us, well, I can't stop thinking about this occurrence. I can't stop thinking, what if it happens again? This is intrusive. We don't know if you're having flashbacks. So we have to really be honest about what we're experiencing internally. Now, there are a few physical symptoms that we can possibly see, especially when it comes to hypervigilance. Like even for me, as a United States Marine serving 2 combat tours as an infantry rifleman, sometimes when I hear something pop, I still look around, and that's also coming from the neighborhood I come from. Look around and see where it's coming from real quick, so I know where the point of attack may be coming from, so I know what I need to do to move and maneuver. But yeah, so those are some of the things when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder. But I know we had a few other questions early on in the conversation about how can we get more men into therapy. Mm-hmm. One individual stated that, hey, my brother feel like going to a therapy is paying a friend. No, that's not what therapy is. And the only way I can tell a lot of my clients, when I get male clients, oftentimes it's a very new experience. It's something that, like, what are we going to be talking about here? And then once we get going, they realize they do have a lot of things internally that they've been processing and holding in. And they realize that this is not a friendship here. I tell all my clients, this is a partnership. This is a team effort to get us to a healthy baseline to where this does not interrupt our personal, professional lives moving forward. That's my ultimate goal with all my clients. But as a third-party, non-objective individual, I'm able to give you some insight with what you may be going through and some guidance to hopefully overcome or be able to manage these symptoms and these signs a lot better. For myself, been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, been diagnosed with seasonal depression. These things, I tell all my clients, a diagnosis is not who you are. A diagnosis is our roadmap to a place of healing and a place of proving who we are as individuals.
And thank you for explaining that. I do appreciate that as well. What are the barriers to support and help?
Well, a lot of times, men, there are not a lot of male therapists. So that's a major barrier that some men have communicated with me. that they feel like, man, I could never find a male therapist. I just didn't feel comfortable disclosing what I want to talk about with a female therapist. So we have to get more men in this field. That's one thing that's one of my crusades, is to expose this field to more men, more minority men, to let them know, hey, this is a viable career option, career path, and we actually need you guys in this field. That's one barrier. Another barrier may be access, getting to the actual therapeutic offices to receive services. So I think now with COVID-19, and one thing that insurance companies gave us a lot more rope as providers to provide the services via telehealth. So now we can see our clients via telehealth. So now you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to worry about traveling in 5 o'clock work traffic to get there. You don't have to worry about the stress or what it takes to get there, to get to the office. All you have to do is tune in and pull out your phone, pull out your laptop, and now you have telehealth. So that's another barrier that we're eliminating. Another barrier is that internal struggle with self. That's going to always be the biggest obstacle. I tell anybody that walks into my office, at the end of the day, this process will not work if it's not something that you truly want to commit to. So that's something that it has to be very, very truthful with ourselves. Not just a check in the box because your family or your friends or those around you say, hey, you need to go, and now you just go into appease them. No, it has to be something that you truly want to do to really really improve throughout this therapeutic process. So those are 3 barriers.
Okay. Now, in regards for how much, let me say it this way, because I know a lot of times it's great to have someone that I could talk to, like myself, or any man really, or any person really. At the end of the day, people love having to be able to have the ability to just call up somebody and be like, look, I need to talk to you about something. And I know this has kind of put a wrench in that. At some point, though, do you think that we're going to need, like, or a man is, or someone, anybody going through abuse is going to need that in-person contact? Because it's one thing to be on the phone with somebody or be on video conference, but it's a whole other thing when you actually have that, as a.
That should always be an option. Once again, telehealth is just an option. Just in case,
Right.
Like my office, my physical office is in Oviedo. But if you live on the west side of Orlando, trying to come to Oviedo for a therapy session, that might be difficult. But if it's something that is extreme enough, a lot of times a client is going to make a way to that face-to-face, but sometimes weekly or bi-weekly, that can become a little too much. So, but to answer your question, definitely, that in-person communication is going to be is definitely necessary, because there's nothing like being in a room and holding space with someone to let them know, hey, I'm standing in the paint with you, per se. I'm in the paint with you. You're not by yourself in this. So there's nothing like that. So I'm with you. You're right about it, man. It's definitely that face-to-face is very important.
Yeah, because I know sometimes physical touch can heal people in ways, that a lot of other ways. And I mean, only from the standpoint like a hug, or giving, like, your people's like a dap, what I'm saying, a handshake or something like that. I know a hug is definitely one of the, from what I've learned, is one of the biggest forms of some type of self-healing. When you have a genuine hug from somebody that, really, really cares about you. I was wondering how this pandemic was actually going to affect our interpersonal connection, because Milton is a friend of mine, and, it's one thing to see him, online like right now, but, it's different to see him in person, because it's like I can actually see you and know that you're doing, physically or at least as mentally well as possible. What do you, and I definitely want both of y'all to add to this as well. What do you, Milton, let's start with you. What do you feel are some of the best ways for supporting male survivors?
I think one of the things that you have to, and I'm gonna talk for myself, what I wanted when I was going to I mean, I didn't talk to anyone about it, but what I wanted to was someone to believe me, because especially when I got older, I was thinking, man, in my teens, they're gonna be like, dude, you didn't, man, somebody was giving you something, you didn't take it, you know, and so and not, and to me it was like I didn't want it. I didn't feel comfortable. It was like almost, it was the most uncomfortable feeling. So one of the best ways to help someone is to remove all of your preconceptions of how they should feel and what they should have done, and and why, and not letting them believe that what all they're feeling is not real, and they should not be these feelings. So that's the first thing, if you want to help somebody, is that you have to be willing to listen to them, and you have to be willing to believe them. No, can somebody fabricate something? We know people have said people have raped them and it's not true, right?
Right.
And I've done stuff to them sexually, and there was no truth to it. But a lot of men, with men, we are, to me, let me not say we're less likely to fabricate a story like that. But if if a man wants to come forward with something, like sexual, abuse, let me just say this: I've had someone, and I never shared with them what happened to me, right? Because I was still afraid to come forward. You know that ego, or as I
Hmm.
said, as Pernell says, not ego, it's a learned behavior. It's like I wanted to keep that macho image of me. Like, oh no, he said. He said, one time two girls had him at gunpoint and told him that they and this was in Jamaica, and guess why this happened? And said they he had to perform, oral sex on them. So if you know much about Jamaican culture, part of the, especially with the dance hall scene, that's
Hmm.
like a no. You don't, men don't, perform
And
oral
yeah.
on women. Okay, not that is really true, probably behind closed doors, but that's the image they want out there. And so they held him at gunpoint and told him, "You gonna do this? Either do that, or we're gonna shoot you." And he was scared
Wow.
for his life. So that was, you know, if somebody says that to you, and I was, to be honest, because when I went through and knew how I was hiding mine, I believed him. I never for a moment doubted him, because you could hear the crack in his voice, the emotions. So believe in them. Secondly, I think I think if you want to help them, is to always be, not necessarily always be available, but you know if they're gonna probably need, if they're coming to you, it means that they're ready to talk about it. And so if especially if you've gone to counseling, you can help the brother to get to that stage. And as Pernell said, when somebody comes to his practice, you let them know you can't be doing it for anyone else. You can't be doing it for this person. You got to be willing to go through the the program and the process to get there.
Journey. That's what you're doing. Go through this
So I
emotional.
think I think that's one of the things you have to do. You have to eventually try to get them to get the professional help, and let them know that the stigma attached to that is forget that. When I've been through it now, and I know how it helped me. So I think those are the three things: is a willingness to listen, a willingness to believe, and a willingness to get them to that point, lead them to the professional help.
Okay. And I thank you for saying that. And you brought up a valid point. And then, for now, I want you to add on just a second, to that, because I know there is this stigma, especially from a young man's perspective. A lot of us had that one teacher, that we probably had a crush on, growing up or what have you. Um, or like maybe like that older woman. So the stigma has been different. Whereas, with us, oh man, man, Miss So and So, man, I'd love to have, that was the stigma. Like it was okay for a young man to want to be with an older woman. And I think, unfortunately, that led to it not. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it possible that that may have led to when men go through sexual abuse that it may not have been seen as sexual abuse because
You
of
know
the
what?
stigma attached?
That's definitely we're gonna do a part 2 to this conversation because that's a whole nother topic though. But when you think about it, when you're a young adolescent, adolescents when we're starting to go through puberty, and we're going through our body and physical changes. So you have these thoughts, oh man, if I can get such and such, my English teacher bad, boy, I wish I had an opportunity. You know what I mean? Those types of thoughts. But it's different between having thoughts and having these things actually done to you. You know what I mean? So right. Even when I think about back in high school, the young ladies who were possibly getting picked up by gentlemen that was older than them, in a way, that was in college and early adulthood, and then to them that was a natural thing. So it's definitely a conversation that we have to have on a different platform, or not just on a different day. Because that's a deep question there that can't be solved in this one conversation. But to do my best to elaborate on the question, is that type of thought process potentially why men do not report abuse? Because we have been conditioned and thought about that, and it's okay for us to feel like this, and if this actually happens, it's not abuse. I don't believe so. Once again, as an adolescent, you're going through a lot of social, emotional, physical, and psychological changes. So I don't think that's it may be a part of it, but it's not the major part. So abuse is you may not understand you're being abused. That could be the misunderstanding. If you're a 16-year-old, 17-year-old young man, I don't know about y'all, but I know at 16, 17, I thought I knew everything. You know what I mean? I thought you couldn't tell me nothing. At 16, 17, I was 220 pounds, and had a physique of a grown man. So if I'm 16, 17, and I have an adult woman showing me attention, at that time, I may not think that's abuse. We may not think that this woman is abusing us, because during this time, you think it's something that you want. And you may not understand the after action effects of that experience until you are later on adult yourself, and you're looking back like, man, I was 16, 17, this woman was 28, 29. And then when you turn 28, 29, you think about looking at a 16, 17-year-old like, I didn't know anything. So that's why I think when it comes to these type of, that type of thought process is definitely something that a lot of victims don't realize they're being abused when they're being abused, first and foremost. They're being neglected and things of that nature. So to answer that question best of my ability, I don't think it's because we had those type of thoughts, but then we realize when we get older that we did get taken advantage of.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard to understand for a lot of us sometimes, because I know for sometimes we as men, and really anybody in terms of any relationship that they're in, but just staying on topic, we as men, I feel like sometimes get so caught up in the way that, for instance, like a woman looks, that we let the fantasy of what she looks like get in the way in terms of the reality of what she really is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So,
right. And that infatuation, I think someone you said in the comments, we get so caught up in the infatuation of the intense feelings, and I think a lot of times, even with men, we get so caught up in the infatuation of the outside look of an individual potentially, that we magnified how good they look and minimize the abuse that we may be getting from this person. This woman bad. This woman may be one of the baddest women on earth. Look good. Every time she walks into the room, turn the heads. But when you two are together and you ride in the car, y'all at home, she's belittling you, telling you you're not gonna be anything, that you ain't gonna never be nothing, never be nothing. Your daddy ain't nothing. And these type of things sometimes we minimize, and we have to realize this is a form of abuse. If you hear that enough, it's almost like it's psychologically programmed you to almost start to believe that.
Right.
So we have to be real about what we're in and what type of relationship and what type of person that we are in relationship with, if we see those things coming about.
Yeah, well, I say that, and I'm not sure about how both of you feel, but I know a lot of times from from my perspective, growing up, I've seen it a lot, whether it be on TV or just in my or just amongst my friends or my peers or what have you. And it'll always be something like, man, I know she does this, that, and the other, but man, she bad. You know what I'm saying? It's always like that. All you know, it's always we always give like a woman a pass um, based on how she looks or how she does certain things or what have you, compared to what she really is. I think a lot of times, like you said, we get blindfolded by the infatuation of it, um, and really at the end of the day. Um, Really at the end of the day, it's really I brought this question up or this situation up before in the previous discussion, but I think more so you have a lot of people using sex as a form of power. So would you feel both of y'all feel that's the same issue? And this I'm saying this as we're about to bring back on Marjorie. Um, but would y'all feel that someone who's sexually abusing somebody uses it more so for as a form of having power over someone rather than using it for sexual pleasure?
It can be case by case, but a lot of times it is a form of power. You know what I mean? And they get off by that power, so they get sexual satisfaction from being in the position of power of this over this individual. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost they go hand in hand. There's a correlation with the two. Just to know that I'm able to. Let me bring that. I guess I'm having internal conflicts, but R. Kelly, for example, man, I was having internal conflicts if I bring that up. But you think about how R. Kelly was almost going after the more defenseless women and then making them cut off from their families and friends and almost getting to a place of the manipulation of the power and control he had over them. It probably increased the sexual satisfaction he got from them. You see what
I mean? Yeah.
So now I control you. I control because almost when you think about it, with pimping, when people talk, go ahead, Milton, my apologies. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. Well, to that point about the power, and I mentioned this earlier is that what the person did was buy me stuff, and they didn't buy me stuff after the sexual abuse started. They buy me stuff before it started. So now I'm taking something from them, and they're expecting something in return. And when I was rebuffing that request, it was okay. So I gave you stuff, right? I gave you stuff. So it's definitely that angle of wanting to gain some kind of power and control and then the whole manipulation of it. And what another thing about um, what you just asked, Brian, um, is that were they manipulated before at some point too when they were younger? And so it's a cycle they are repeating, not because it's going to help them to that they think is normal, that it was done to them, and now they're doing it because it never felt. I don't know if this makes sense, Pernell, but it never felt. They never felt mean to me. That makes sense.
That makes sense. You felt loved. You felt appreciated. You felt like they were just okay individual.
But it still felt wrong. It still felt uncomfortable. But they were smiling. They were loving. It seemed gentle and everything, except when it was to that point where you're gonna have to do this right now. Then it became hard. Some of not them, but what the act that they were asking for. I don't know if that makes sense. That makes sense.
No, it makes plenty of sense. It makes plenty of sense.
Okay.
Oftentimes, especially when it's in that type of dynamic of not when it's not this apparent physically abusive type of relationship. This is what we call coercion abuse. They've been coerced, and this person is utilizing this relationship that makes you feel good, make you feel okay. Like I say, still uncomfortable, but they're not a bad person in your eyes. It's just this person is making you feel very uncomfortable, and that's the type of abuse is always the most difficult to really import and report. Because it's like, man, this person's not a bad person in my eyes, but I do feel uncomfortable with them. I know what they're doing isn't right, but I don't want to hurt them because I don't feel like it's
That's how I felt. That was deep down part of how I felt. I was scared that I'm not going to believe, but also they've been nice to me. They've been good to me. They're always looking out for me and everything else. So if I said this, I might, I might really hurt them, and if I don't hurt them, and because nobody believe me, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna get hurt even more.
no, that makes plenty of sense. That makes plenty of sense, and that's the reason why. How did you just wake up? You just went to sleep. I'm just gonna get you in a second. Hold on. But when you get to that place of that type of thought process, and that's why a lot of victims don't come forward. Because a lot of times the abusers are individuals that to them they're not bad people. They just make me feel confident. And I feel like I don't want to ruin their life. I don't want to ruin their life by telling people what they actually are doing. So the victim now becomes uh, the protector. You know what I mean? Almost like a form of Stockholm syndrome. I don't know if you guys familiar with Stockholm syndrome. Is when the kidnapper, the person that has kidnapped you, uh, has held you hostage, but now you as a hostage are starting to take the side of the kidnapper because they make you as a human being first.
Yeah,
Now,
I've heard that, and a lot of people will do that to like I've heard when people break up a domestic violence case where someone is being beaten up, and then they go right back to the abuser or what have you. So listen, what I want to do is just answer, or not just answer, just bring on a couple of um, bring up a couple of the comments or what have you, and then we want to bring up Marjorie. We want to bring Marjorie back as well because this is almost coming to an end. So we had one person wanted to ask, looks like Christine, what do you think in regards to racism and apathy? I think I'm not quite sure how to.
what was the question again?
It says, what do you think in regards to racism and apathy?
So when it comes to racism, and I'm gonna try my best to answer this from what I think you're asking, Christine. Racism in the form of being victims. So I think especially within the Black community, a lot of times we already feel as if the system is not set up to help us. So we're at the victims, it probably makes a huge impact about how we go about and report. Because I have heard stories of because someone compared racism and sexual violence.
Okay.
Those to me, personally, those are two different things, and we can definitely get deeper into that. But when it comes to racism, what I'm thinking, if you're talking about racism and when it comes to victims, a lot of times those in the minority communities may feel like as if they may report this, but it may not get the adequate response that they believe it deserves to receive. Apathy is just almost not feeling what somebody else is going through. To me, that's why empathy is very important. Even if you can't say, even if you haven't been through it yourself, even if it's something that you have never really truly heard of. Am I disturbing you from going to sleep? Even if it's something that you can't really uh, uh, physically has experienced, having empathy to just remove yourself for a moment and put yourself in this person's shoes. So we have to remove that apathy. So I hope I answered your question there, Christine.
Yeah, and also, like, how did you
Brian, can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay, well, I'm gonna take it further back. It's not just where back in slavery where slave masters were sexually abusing or for fathers. You understand? And for mothers. Um, where she got the wife got the mandingo. You understand? and and the master, the slave master, the husband, he was impregnating these women who didn't want to be with him at all. You know, there may have been cases where people were genuinely in love with the master, but for the most part, and then that has actually, that's to me that has transferred down the years too, as far as the racism aspect of it, because that's also um, trying to have superiority over another race in this way. You know,
Right.
you are going to do what I want to say to do, not because um, of the manipulation and a male and female, but because I'm a white superior to you. They've added the racism to the sexual abuse to it, all coupled in one. And so we are being the brunt to this down the years, because you have folks who didn't know that their daddy was white, but they were wondering, oh, the complexion is so light, you know, and they never knew, and it was hush hush. That was hush hush, just like with me, I kept it hush hush. But no, it's an added racism to that. And so we see the result that the empathy is not there. It's like, why y'all complaining? You had a black president. You understand? Why you always making everything about race? And so we have had that mental um, uh, that mental attack on our lives from way before, not just now. And yes, among ourselves, yes, we had, but we have also had it. I hope I was clear on that part.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Thanks for
listen,
sharing.
thank you for, yeah, and again, thank you for sharing. What I want to do right now, Marjorie, are you there? Because I want to bring Marjorie um, back on the line.
Yes, I'm
And
here.
there
I'm
she
here.
goes. Okay, there we are. Yes. When you want to add
Thank you,
anything?
guys. That was something else. I really hope that, I mean, the audience was engaged, and that's what we want to see. People had questions, and you guys really answered them, and this really turned out the way we expected it to. So before I officially close, I just want to say something to our listening audience. I want you all to know that we're currently taking submissions of stories and poems and music that have been written by survivors of abuse for our theatrical production, Languages of Abuse. It's scheduled to be performed in October. We want to hear your stories, and we want society to understand that men also experience abuse and what that looks like. Francisco, you can bring them all back on the screen with me, because I want to finish up with them. So if you would like your story to be told through a theatrical lens and performed by local artists, you can submit your stories at info@givingvoicesproject.org. Kim will share that email address with you in the chat. And that way you can reach out to us and share your stories if you'd like to see that be a part of the program. Also, if you enjoyed this discussion today and you would like to see more of this, and we could just tell that there's just so much more we could talk about, we could go even deeper with it, we want to invite you to support us by visiting our website at givingvoicesproject.org and just click on the donate button and leave a donation of any size that is comfortable for you, so that we can continue to host projects like this. We know because of COVID, everything is virtual. And so we've really had to pivot the way we do our work and the way we bring stories to you all. And this is just one way of doing it. So helping to support us, we would greatly appreciate it in that way. I want to thank our guests. You know, Purnell, I know you are busy. You are a man right now running for office. For those of you that do not know, he is running for county commissioner for District 5 in Seminole County. And did I get that right, Purnell?
Oh, yeah, yes, you did. Yes, I'm running for county commissioner, Seminole County Commissioner, District 5.
Exactly. And so if you live in that area, vote for him. If you know someone that lives in that area, tell them to vote for him. Okay. So I want to thank you for your busy schedule. Kudos for doing daddy duty while doing this. I was impressed.
And she's like, hey, I gotta go. You got this. I'm like, okay, cool.
He is such a good baby. He is such a good baby. So that's a blessing. So and with everything else going on, just thank you for your time. Milton, we know you've got to get to work, and we were really trying to make sure that you could be a part of this and sharing your story. Thank you so much for your transparency and your openness and honesty in this conversation. And also, Ryan, you know I called you out of the blue last minute, like, dude, can you do this for us? And you did it. And, thank you. You did a wonderful job. So thank you,
Thank
all
you.
three of you, for taking your time to do this. And then I also want to give a shout out to our tech support, Francisco Barreto in the background. You don't see him, but he's making all of this happen for us and for everyone on our events committee, all of our volunteers and our board members. Thank you all for your hard work on this. And don't forget to like our Facebook group. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram so you don't don't miss another one of these important discussions. So until then, thank you all for joining us. Have a good one. Bye-bye.